Welcome to the Marketing Growth Podcast. I'm your host, Shane Barker, and we have Daniel Mangena with us again today. On the last two episodes, we talked about his entrepreneurship journey and why having a clear intention is crucial to finding success in life. Let's pick up the conversation where we left off. Let's talk about, so I want to talk a little bit about, because I know you obviously touch on this and some of the content that I've seen you put out there is about mindfulness and why entrepreneurs should focus on mindfulness, right? Because I think I think we've heard these terms as entrepreneurs and well, just as people, right? And being intentional and mindfulness. I think that connection between what needs to happen and being able to make that happen is always the disconnect, right? Like, do I read a book? Once again, what do we do? Right? That's always the thing. It's like, what? And I think that's where we get into this thing of like, oh, this is what, Elon Musk does 3 times every morning before he gets up and starts his day. And this is how you can become a billionaire. And it's like, a 300-word article. And I'm like, I don't think those 3 things are the reason he's a billionaire, but maybe it's because he puts his feet in cold water. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, who knew that was I do that every day. So now I just put my feet in cold water and I'm going to be still, yeah, exactly. I'm just waiting for the money to transfer at this point. But what is the difference between mindfulness and being intentional? Because I think that's always been a disconnect for me. Like, what is that? What's the differentiator there?
So for me, again, cross-sectioning with the flow funnel, intentionality is that first step. It sets me off in the right direction. Mindfulness sets me up to actually have the capacity to experience the thing that I want to be intentional about. So let's use success. I wanted to stay away from the money exactly, but let's just use the money. Like I want to have it's the magic number, $100,000 business, whatever. So my intention is to have $100,000 business. Just for the record, guys, you're going to be much better off going, I want to impact X amount of lives. Yeah. And allow the 100,000 to follow it. Or I want to touch this many people or serve this many people and the money be, but you'll find you feel better, you feel more fulfilled, and people will refer you. It's much better way, but we're just using this number just for, it's a measurable metric, right? So when I have 100,000, okay, so that's my intention. Mindfulness can set me up to actually have the internal environment that supports me being able to go out and get that. So it can set me up being able to connect to the emotions of what it would be like for me to have 100,000. It can allow me to overcome the stress and the anxiety around it. It can set me up to work on my limiting beliefs around whether or not I can do it, to develop that positive mindset around it. But a lot of people are just being mindful without an intention and, spoiler alert, aren't actually doing any action taking. They do their vision board party every year. They do their meditation every morning. They've got the check on the wall for 100,000 and like, okay, my feet are in cold water and I meditated. Where's my 100,000, right? So mindfulness is a great tool. Intention is a great tool. Action is a great tool. But bring it all together, and that's when you're going to see the magic happen.
It makes total sense. I think that's the thing. The biggest thing, and we've said this I don't know how many times now, is just it's going to be work, right? Like that's where I think people get in in their mind of like, I don't want to do, I don't want the 9-second ab. I want the 6-second abs, right? That's what I want to do. I just want to work out 6 seconds a day. I'm going to eat cupcakes and drink beer and do all the stuff that I do. And I want my abs, but it's like, well, but what are you doing to put in that work? And I think that is always the missing piece. I think for most people is that most people don't put in the work. Like I've worked with influencers. I had one of my influencers that I've worked with that, we got her to $1.6 million selling fitness ebooks. And she was, and they're fitness ebooks. They weren't anything magical. It wasn't like a super magic push-up that nobody's done, or like, this is how you do the crunch in the air on your magical floating. There was nothing. It was literally just the same workout you could go look at on Pinterest or somebody would have on their website for free. Like literally, there was no magic to it. But the thing is like, it just comes down to putting in the work. Like that's what it is. Like if you want a chest, if you did push-ups for the next 3 months and you did 50 a day, you probably have a chest. Like it's not, but it's that next step of putting in that work of making it happen, I think is where people get that disconnect because they want to skip out on some of the steps. I want to get there. How do I get there faster or sooner and stuff like that? And I think that is a problem with like, there's a reason, like I think with the framework that you guys have put together, there's a reason why there's that framework, right? It's like, you can't have one without the other. I mean, you can, but you're not going to get to where you need to be.
And this is the thing, I just want to quickly throw in there, not to cut you, but because I know that the people that want to just have the thing on the wall are like, but what about infinite possibility? Quantum physics and the quantum field. Yeah. And possibility does not equal probability. Let me say that again. Possibility does not equal probability. Is it possible that you can just put your feet in water and you become a billionaire? We live in a universe that's been scientifically demonstrated to have an aspect of infinite possibility to it. Yes, but the probability. Do you want to spend the next 40 years with your feet in cold water, waiting for that very small probability based on the fact that you've got none of the other pieces going? Or do you want to just spend the next 40 years celebrating and enjoying the life that you've built around you actually just taking some action? It's like, which one do you want? Do you want to go to the mountains and learn to be a yogi for 20 years so you can manifest 100,000 out of your butt? Or do you want to just put some work in now? 100 grand a year, it's $2,000 a week. It's not that big a deal. $8,333 a month, just over $2,000 a week. If you're working 5 days a week, that's $400 a day of value to put out to the world. It's not a big ask. And yet we'd rather sit and own about it than to go out there and actually legitimately go and share value and put something of value out into the world and allow people to remunerate you for it. It's bonkers to me. Absolutely bonkers.
It really is. It really is. I mean, I think that's the hard part is like, yes, I think the probability thing, is it, can it happen? It can, right? But we look at the probability, right? Like it's like of anything I would think of, my good old stats teacher, which I wish I would have paid a lot more attention. Shout out to my old stats teacher. But it's like, yeah, exactly. I knew you were saying some cool stuff. I thought it was just for betting and stuff, but I didn't know that it was actually going to maybe equal something in my life and something where I'd have to pay attention. But, I think that's the hard part is like when you really being able to, once again, is to grind it out and put in that work, right? Because that's where the hard part is. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff in my life that I've, wanted to do. And a lot of the times there's these uphill battles. I mean, in most stuff that we want to do, right? But you have to be willing. For me, I enjoy that. Like I enjoy that journey of doing something that's uncomfortable and going and trying something new, like going to Florida with some guy named Andrew that said he did ayahuasca and he had done ayahuasca. Like, that's a case in point. Like, I mean, literally was my wife's like, so you're going out to Florida, and this guy was a lead that came into my website. Like that's how well we knew each other. And and when I got there, I was looking around thinking, this is pretty much where people die. I'm not gonna make it out of here because I didn't know Andrew that well. And so there was a lot of anyways, a lot of growth that happened through not dying and through making it through the experience, that's it. Staying alive. That's it, man. Exactly. We absolutely shout out to Staying Alive. So anyways, I love that. So what would I'm trying to think when we talk about mindfulness, how has mindfulness helped you as an entrepreneur? I mean, how has that helped you stay focused in the businesses that you've built?
So again, it just supports the internal environment, right? So a daily practice of meditation keeps my mind focused, keeps me sharp. The entrepreneurial journey is not an easy one. It's not for everybody. I don't know what percentage of businesses go out of, they don't make it through 3 years. Like a lot of people they don't make it. And in the current climate where things are interesting and people are running towards entrepreneurship and owning their own business, it's like, maybe you're not built for it. Maybe you're not. But one of the ways that you can support you dealing with the challenges that do show up in entrepreneurship is having mindfulness practices. Things like meditation. Breathwork's great for anxiety and dealing with challenges and dealing with the pressure that shows up every day. Maintaining a positive outlook in the face of ups and downs. Like a lot of people are going into a completely new world. You've been a house cat. Like you get that paycheck every 2 weeks or once a month. That's not happening in entrepreneurship. If you don't get out in these streets, you're not eating.
Yeah. I can confirm that. So I've always been an entrepreneur, like literally forever, right? And I think that's one of the hardest things that people don't realize is like becoming an entrepreneur, it becomes difficult, right? Like what people don't realize is that we talk about that journey. There's always this journey of entrepreneur, what people think is like from this line to this line, but really what it is, it's a squiggly line, right? It's just things that happen. To be able to become an entrepreneur, the things you have to deal with. I always tell entrepreneurs, because I do a lot of consulting for small business administration here in the United States. And I always tell them, listen, if it was easy, then everybody would be doing it, right? And right, I mean, that just comes down to some of the things that it's going to be difficult as an entrepreneur. But the thing is you gotta know, are you built for that, right? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Like, are you going to be able to take some punches and be able to get back up? Because it's going to happen over and over and over. And there'll be a point where hopefully you can sell your business and you sell it for your millions of dollars or whatever you want to do. But to get to that point, there's going to be 1,000 right turns, left turns, and pivots, and this, that, and the other. You're going to rock bottom. You're going to come back up. I mean, we're not built for that. I mean, we're not trained for that, right? Like, it's like nobody says, hey, to be an entrepreneur, for the most part, it's the, you just see the upside. Like, I took a class, this was, I won't tell you how many years ago, but a long time ago in college. It was an entrepreneurship class. And the crazy part about that was the teacher said, okay, why do you want to be an entrepreneur? I remember the students were saying, and I'd already been an entrepreneur, and they're like, well, I just don't want to have a boss. And they're like, okay, but if you like this girl wanted to own a restaurant, like, if you own a restaurant, like, every person that walks in that restaurant is your boss. Because they're always going to have suggestions and this and want to get a hold of you. And we had a problem, the server did this. And so those are all going to be your bosses. Well, yeah, and I just want to open a restaurant and then, like, collect my money. I want to collect money and then go golfing. Okay, so somebody else is running your restaurant, and I'm pretty sure they're going to be stealing from you at this point because you're not going to be running your own business. And so I think it comes down to this thing of, like, being an entrepreneur. And I love that, because you touched on this earlier, is about how you talk about the ups and downs. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, I think that's what it is like talking about, you talk about the ups and downs of the good things that you've done, the bad things that you've done. Once again, that journey, because I think that's important, because we're not always mindful. We want to be, right? And we're not always, like, in the present moment. And it sometimes becomes difficult to do through, through investing or things that we've done. So I love that. I love how honest you are about, like I said, about how, the things you should be doing. But once again, there's the ups and downs that become challenging. And I think you talk honestly about that. And I love the fact that you do that.
And like we said, most.
Can you hear me? I think there might be a little bit of a lag.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. So, and like we discussed, the average multimillionaire has lost everything twice. I know that's not even a squiggle. That's a wipe everything out and just your line just disappears.
Like 100%. And that's what's crazy. Like, to think that, and can most people handle that? Like, mentally, not only once, but twice. I mean, that takes perseverance, right? Like, that's just not, a lot of people aren't built for that. Like, when you lose everything, that's, that is, because our backgrounds are very similar. I had a business that I built up to $25 million that got taken from me, which is a whole nother, we don't have enough time on the podcast today to talk about everything that happened there. But it was a $25 million business that I was just about to sell, and it got swiped out from underneath me. And so that's like, and that was like, next day I'm like, man, what just happened? Like, I literally just lost millions of dollars overnight. And a lot of people don't know that story about me, which is a whole nother conversation. But it's an interesting thing to be brought down back to square one and to be like, man, like, what is going on right now? Like, this is crazy. It's like one of those deals. I wanted to talk about, like, how do you kind of want to talk about that a little bit? I can imagine that, during the pandemic, with all the things that are going on in the world, it becomes a little difficult to kind of stay focused. Like, how were you able to, like, during the pandemic, how were you able to, like, stay mindful?
First and foremost, I think it comes down to the general viewpoint I've got on life, which is that none of us are getting out of this alive, so don't take it all so seriously.
I love that. Right? Because we're not. The last time I checked, nobody's lived forever. Unless you're Elon Musk, I think if you put your feet in cold water, I think that does postpone it for 10 years, I think is what I've heard. You'll get some years on that.
But none of us are getting out of this alive. And if you focus on what matters and how little control, not creative capacity, but control we have over the things already in motion. And that actually, if we deploy our energy more deliberately and intentionally to how we deal with the things that have happened and put more of our focus in what we're doing now into what is going to happen, then you can win at life. But if you're running around trying to control what your government does, what your local governor does, what this person does, what that person does, look at what you can control. So for me, where do you live? The UK was really, really battered. Like, people were going into really deep depression, stuck in their homes, blah, 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 couldn't get food, couldn't get toilet paper. I made a choice to stay somewhere where, and then also I developed a habit of being responsible for my life over time. So when all the challenges around COVID kicked off, I wasn't looking for somebody to save me. I'd already been cultivating a way of doing things, a way of living that was, okay, what can I do? How can I do that here? So if people take this as an opportunity to say, hang on a minute, my government just do their best, regardless of what your political standing is. I genuinely believe a lot of people, they're just trying to do their best. Maybe some of them have a political agenda about getting re-elected. Guess what? That's their job. It's their job to get re-elected. So they're probably going to have some kind of ulterior motive, but they're probably just trying to deal with the fact that, I mean, tens of millions, hundreds of millions live in the US, hundreds of millions of people losing their minds. What can we do? Right? That's it. And try and get re-elected at the same time. Instead of waiting for them, what can I do? How can I show up to make sure that my bases are covered and I can make it through this time? There's magic there. Magic there that if deployed can mean that when the next pandemic comes, whatever it is, it might not be a medical pandemic. It could be an economic pandemic like we saw in 2008. You can be resourced to navigate it and actually make it through.
And I think I love that. So, my mom talked heavily about this. And what I mean by that is that, she talks about what are you in control of? Like, what do you have power over, right? Like, because you can't, the political thing, once again, whether you're Democrat, Republican, or doesn't matter what you're, whatever, green, like whatever you want to, whatever you resonate with. But at the end of the day, it's like that's when because I'm not a heavy political person, like I'll have conversations with people, but for me, I look at my environment, I look at the people that are around me, I look at things that I can control, right? That I can, people are like, oh, but what happens if this happens? Well, then I'll just do this. Like, for me, it's not something that, like, I look at it like these are things that I have within my realm that I have some type of control over. And so those are the things that I focus on. I can't tell you what president this or president that or chancellor this or chancellor that, like what they're going to do, right? Because I don't really have control over that. Like, I can vote for this and have some power there. I get that. But at the end of the day, it's like I don't really have control over that, right? And I can stress out about that every day. I can look at it, I can read about it, oh my God, and cause me anxiety and all the other fun stuff that would go along with that, trying to, get grasps of what's going on. Or I can just say, you know what? These are the things that I'm in control over. These are the things that I can look at, and I can, go and have a say, and I can empower myself by, taking control of that. So I think it's important for people to realize, like, if you're out there looking at third-party stuff that you have no control over, you're going to lose your mind trying to control 100%. That.
100%. Yeah, like it just doesn't make any sense. And as an entrepreneur, where again, you're not a house cat anymore. Like, you're out in the streets, like looking through the dustbins or whatever, right? It's like
literally.
And if you're spending all that time that should be spent out serving people at the highest level and finding ways to solve problems, if you're spending all that time complaining about who may or may not be sitting in a house of a different color, right? A White House or whatever, or a naval observatory where the other one lives, or, what this person do, or what's happening on Instagram, or what Kylie Jenner's doing, or what. If you're doing that, then you're not present and available to do something about you taking care of what you need to take care of, which just makes no sense at all. Nobody's going to do it for you.
No, they're not. Because all they're going to do is you got to care about yourself, and you got to take control of what you need to take control over. And it's not going to be easy, but you got to, if you're living, I always talk about people living rent free in your mind. And if they're living rent free in your mind, it's like, you got to really take a look at that and say, okay, is this anything good happening from this, right? That's what I look at. Is this making me happier? Is this getting me closer to what I want to be as a human being, as a, father, dad, whatever it may be. So, well, Danny, this was awesome, man. Like I said, I knew this was going to be a fun interview with you. I knew your personality ahead of time, and I knew we'd be able to ask you some good questions. You'd be able to help us with, thinking things, being mindful and intentional. So I do have a few, like we call it the fun section. I'm not, like I said, I always say this, not that we didn't have some fun before this. Yeah, no, you got to get ready, get loose, my friend, because this is where all the fun happens. If you could travel to one place in the world for free, where would it be? And where would you go?
I want to go to Antarctica, really see if there's a hole that goes into the center of the earth.
I heard rumors about that. It goes really deep. Does it go to China? No, I don't know if it stops.
Admiral Byrd, wrote some papers apparently, and maybe there's aliens there. I don't know. I watched some stuff on Amazon. There's some really weird documentaries on Amazon Prime about that. And my son just screamed his approval of that as well. So yeah, that's what I do. I want to go to Antarctica, to the place where you're not allowed to go, and see if I can get in, and if there is really a hole or aliens. I don't know. I want to go.
Thank you, Daniel, for joining us. It's been a pleasure to have you here. If you're listening to the podcast and like what you hear, make sure you subscribe and please write a review to tell us what you like about the podcast. Next week, we'll bring you tips and advice from another marketing leader. So stay tuned for more interesting insights and industry trends.